let folks sign in here.
Looks like you're very casual today, Jethro.
Say that again.
Looks like you're very casual today.
I'm at I'm remote. I'm at a school up in Buffalo for a kids soccer tournament. So
Ah,
there's going to be lots of background noise, unfortunately. And I'm struggling with my Wi-Fi, so we'll see how it holds up.
okay. Well, I'm traveling too, so let's hope that at least one of us can make it.
Hmm. Going to have to switch laptops here.
Shall we get
Drew.
started? All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Uh, Here we are back again for another session of the Extracorporeal Hour. I'm Cedric Dufayet. I'm the head of the dialysis unit for UC Davis down in San Diego, and I'm co-hosting with Jethro Forbes, who's the lead of the unit at Cornell University. Um, so hopefully we'll have some participation today. I know that a few people wanted to potentially discuss cases, but I don't see them on quite right now. But yeah, we'll see.
Hey, good morning, everybody. As Cedric said, I'm Jethro. I'm learning how to do a lot of these things just like you guys, and I'm trying to share some of our collective experience here, which, to Cedric's point, really can only happen if we've got some folks that are brave enough to share what's going on, both good, bad, ugly, beautiful, otherwise. Um, so with that, I don't know, Drew. Drew's talking to somebody in the background there. Drew often has some good cases for us. I don't know. Did you have something to share from the last couple weeks? Maybe.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to find my unmute button. Um,
How are things going for you guys in Columbus?
Actually, pretty well. We had a really good IMHA case last week. It was a 5 kg, 4-year-old male castrated dachshund, primary IMHA that we saw. So by the time I saw the dog on like a day after admit, I gave it its second and third transfusions. Um, And then we ended up doing talking to the owners about TPE and just extracorporeal therapy in general. We have a Purify pump and an Amicus. So our circuit volume for the Amicus is 160 mils. And I was not comfortable putting this dog on that circuit, even if I primed it. So what I ended up doing, and the dog's T-Billy was 30. I ended up doing a 4-hour hemoperfusion uh, session on whatever that night was, and we decreased the T-Billy significantly. I think it was, I don't know, I don't have the numbers in front of me, probably like down to closer to like 11, 12, 16, something like that. And then I shipped the dog the next day to JD Foster at Friendship, and he did 3 TPE sessions on the dog. The dog did great. It's actually coming back to see us today for a recheck. Um, so I don't have all of JD's notes, and I don't have a total, real time update for the dog because I haven't seen it yet today. Um, but it was an amazing partnership. I reached out and just called JD, and I was so thankful for this community and this network because I was able to talk to him directly and say like, hey, this is my case. What do you think about it? And I was talking to Jethro in the background too about this. And like, what do you think about putting this dog on the amicus? We all think that's a bad plan. Um, I think I reached out to Carol and Ty as well. So it was really fun to just be able to talk to different people that have had different experiences with this, with the different platforms. And at the end of the day, it was the Carpe Diem that saved the day and was able to provide the low circuit volume and 3 safe TPE options for this dog as family. So.
Yeah, it's a brilliant example, as you said, of the community that we're building and continue to build, and the open door, open phone, that I think is really such a strength of this group. How long of a drive is it for your clients to get to Friendship?
It was like 7 hours, give or take. So they left here around 1. And after I got home and I called the ER at Friendship just to check in, and they're like, oh, they literally just got to a waiting room at like 8 o'clock. So it was pretty straight shot, and the team there was great. I forwarded them records and talked to the ER doc, and JD didn't seem to have any problems the next day. So I think everything went okay. Catheter made the transit. And yeah, it was a really fun collaboration.
So
Nice.
what did you use for your hemoperfusion in the first place?
I used the extra small circuit of the Purify with a cytosorbents 50 mil device.
Okay.
And we did 2 devices. So the first one I ran for about an hour and a half, and then the second one I ran for 3 hours. So
All right. And you got about like a 50% reduction?
yeah, I'm trying to. I wish I could.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll look for that.
Hold on. I'm going to show you a picture because it was absolutely actually. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you can see.
Okay.
Yeah,
They're usually not that color.
Correct. No.
Yeah, I was like, we have a comparison.
Yeah, I want to say, and I now I'm remembering the numbers a little bit better. The initial, so the T-Billy before we started was greater than 60 on one analyzer and came back as 47 on the other analyzer. And then if I looked at just our ABL, it was greater than 35 pre hemoperfusion and 27.8 post. So I don't really know how much we took out because it was greater than both analyzers could give us a numerical value for, but about a 50-ish, 40, 50-ish% reduction. And the
I
dog
think it's
clinically looked so much better.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty good because like when my experience doing only TP on these guys is that usually I get about a 30% reduction with the 1.5 plasma volume, which just shows that the bilirubin is kind of coming from the second compartment within the vasculature as you treat. And I think if we want to reduce more than that, like 30, 40%, we really need to add hemoperfusion or plasma perfusion in the mix. And the last case where we had a very high bilirubin, that's what we did. Just like after 1.5 plasma volume of plasma exchange, centrifugal plasma exchange, we just put a cartridge on the waistline and started to do plasma perfusion and return the treated plasma to the patient. But yeah, I feel like if you're only doing TPE, like the 1.5 plasma volume, like you can probably expect a 30% reduction, not much more.
Hey, here's maybe similar size patient, maybe a little bit bigger. This was Cole. He was a pug that we treated a while back here. And I think we're all kind of getting at the same thing, just a different illustration of about 50% drop there. And that first 0.5 plasma volumes exchanged with the vet rescue device in circuit there, which then as it plateaus out, I mean, this kind of illustrated for me, perhaps that equilibrium points in these cases would suggest swapping out that column at some point in time there. I don't know if that's anything that Drew, you and Jay saw with your case or thought about swapping those guys out. Or Cedric, if you had any input or thoughts on that as well. I think more of these illustrations may help us make these decisions.
We did swap it out. It made a huge difference. So this is one of 2 devices. So the first one we ran for an hour and a half, which I think in the end,
I'm gonna go ahead and start
don't remember how much, I don't know how many blood volumes we ended up doing, but I ran the first device for about 90 minutes. And then we did another second device, same size, blood primed both of them, and they both came out looking like this. So, absolutely. And I talked to Parker too, and he helped me kind of figure out the timing on when to do that. We picked somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes, and things were going well. So I just pushed it a little bit and said, hey, we'll run another additional 3 hours after this. And I mean, it was like the dog was like, didn't have like kernicterus and like wasn't mentally affected by the bilirubin from a like massive standpoint. Like he was a quiet, I don't feel good dog for a dog that has a T-billy of 60, but he was like trying to jump off the table by the time we were done. We had to like kind of like hold him for the last half hour and help just get through the procedure. So he definitely felt better pretty quickly. And from what the columns looked like, it was just absolutely disgusting.
And I wonder if sometimes we just like underestimate the impact of the bilirubin. Or I've seen that in some ibuprofen dogs too, where it's like, dog doesn't look like it's neurologic right now. And then you start treating the dog, and when you see the dog at the end of a treatment, you're just like, oh, hindsight, maybe he was, because it's not the same dog. So yeah, that's kind of an observation I've made it a couple of times where you see that puppy looks happy and everything, and you don't think there's any neurologic involvement, and then you realize that, oh, okay, yes, he was kind of obtunded to some extent. So yeah, I'm not sure anybody has a cutoff where you would start like treating just for bilirubin removal. I mean, most of the time there's the over indication, like that we were treating for the IMHA anyway. But just for bilirubin, I don't know if anybody has a number in their head where they would say, okay, we're going to remove bilirubin just for the sake of removing bilirubin.
Kernicterus
Yeah.
developing.
Yeah.
Well, I had a case a few months ago. It was like a really bad zinc. I'm pretty sure it was a zinc toxicity, and the dog's bilirubin was like 60 or 70, and the dog was like very neurologically affected by it. And so I ended up doing like just a hemoperfusion treatment on our IHD machine using the vet rescue column. Um, the dog like improved a little bit. I like don't remember the numbers. It was so long ago. I should be better about keeping notes. And the bilirubin came down after I switched the cartridge halfway through and I got a good reduction. But then the dog just kept hemolyzing and was acting really weird. And the owners elected to euthanize the dog in the middle of the night. So I do feel like after the treatment, the dog looked briefly better. But then I don't know what happened on the overnight for why they chose to euthanize the dog.
I think for me, I made the decision because I didn't have another alternative. And so it was
Yeah.
like, how do I help this dog right now? In order to buy myself some time to get it a little bit more stable to try to go somewhere else. And I think it also in that initial period, the owners were still kind of deciding like how in it to win it are they, what do they want to do? And so it gave us that a little bit of a buffer, which was really nice to still do something, make the dog feel better and set it up for success to go somewhere else and finish the therapy that it really needed.
Yeah.
Andrew, I'm curious, did the dog require any more blood transfusions between the time you started your hemoperfusion and when it got transferred to JD? So
No.
did this hemoperfusion actually do something to stabilize the hemolysis, do you think?
I mean, I think maybe I didn't give it any more blood. I don't know if JD had to or not, but I mean, it's a small dog too, so I don't know if it got primed. Maybe the circuits got primed with blood, and that kind of helps along the way. But no, I mean, we were just continually giving this dog blood, and I mean, it's also like I finished the procedure at like 9 o'clock one night, and they left at noon for DC the next morning. So like, but the dog's hematocrit was routinely like in the 20-ish, 24-ish range, and I think it was up at like 32 when I sent it. So
You didn't have, did you do an agglutination test or anything like that
I
to
mean,
see?
everything was agglutinating. Yeah,
Pardon me?
everything was agglutinating.
But even after the hemoperfusion?
I believe so because JD told me that the agglutination improved significantly after the first TPE.
Yeah.
But I think if you took out complement, you might have had, like, if
Less.
complement factors might come out with cytosorb, and that you might have less complement mediated, but you still would have all those antibodies because those won't be cleared by that. So I could still see how you'd have autoagglutination, but maybe less hemolysis via complement.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and I think the combination of plasma exchange and plasma absorption or hemoabsorption for these IMHA cases, I think that's likely going to turn out to be a good combination. And I do it, kind of on the first treatment. I've got some data that shows where we did plasma exchange on a dog and got about a 50% reduction in with a 1.4 plasma volume exchange treatment, and then added another 5 plasma volumes of absorption and got an additional 60% reduction in the bilirubin. So collectively, over the course of what that therapy would have been, there was an 80% reduction in the bilirubin concentration. Oh, that actually, I'm sorry, that's IgG concentration. This was a different study, but it significantly adds to the bilirubin reduction, I think.
Well, and I see representatives for both hemoperfusion devices on the call. I don't know if either of them have anything to add to the conversation about absorptive capacities of either the Cytoclear or the that rescue device, or hidden studies that none of us know about thus far, either on the human side or on the vet side.
So thank you, Jethro. So if the team doesn't mind, I'll actually share something that we have seen. So hold on. All right, so everybody should see my screen right now. So this paper was published back in, I believe, or this case was published back in May of this year. And so, typical of what you guys are talking about. But the interesting thing about this case for me is that the treating veterinarian decided to do just TPE on the first treatment, and to see the impact that had on bilirubin reduction. And you could see that there was a 30% reduction, or roughly 30% reduction with TPE alone. So you got some relief from the high levels of bilirubin. But on the second and third treatments, they used one column with the vet rescue to see if they could get additional reduction in the bilirubin to ease some of that burden. And you can see that they had a 60% reduction on each treatment. So nearly doubling, with one column. The discussion around here would be, should they have potentially used 2 columns? Because as we know, with a lot of bilirubin circulating, these columns, pull it off really fast. It's one of the discussions I had with Dr. Taylor regarding, just treating for bilirubin reduction. We will pull it off real fast, and then we start to taper off with continued reduction. But to truly get it to, reduce exponentially faster using a second device certainly can be advantageous. But it also makes sense with Dr. Taylor's numbers with treating for hemoperfusion alone. You're going to, in 2 devices, you will see, significant reduction there. But TPE, to Dr. Calgill's point, I think is paramount in treating these patients. because you're not going to, address the, the true issue here. It will be a bridge. It'll allow you to, potentially get that patient treated, addressed in the short term, but then you've got to have the option about, okay, what are we going to do next and where are we going to send them? Which is, what Dr. Taylor's team did.
Yeah, I have the right slide now. If you would permit me to share
Yeah, let me stop
my
sharing.
slide. Let's see, share. So, is it showing?
Not quite yet. There you go.
So this was, and we've had a lot of discussion about you do an 80% or a 1.5 plasma volume exchange, and you expect more than a 35 or 40% reduction in solutes. And JD and I have argued about this, and he thinks that there isn't redistribution of the bilirubin, but look at the bilirubin in this dog. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in every single compartment, and I think you only get this suboptimal reduction in bilirubin with plasma exchange, because as soon as you take it out, it just redistributes back into the vasculature. And so a 38% reduction with 1.5 plasma volumes exchange of plasma exchange, and then this was a carbon-based reduction. And this sample was broken in the refrigerator, so I can't tell you exactly what that value was. But if we project this curve out to this additional absorptive period here, we would have gotten a tremendously greater, got 80% reduction with the combined therapy, and it would have been even a little bit lower if we knew what this sample was. But I think this is a good combination. And to the other comment, if you're taking out complement or some other things that are going to participate in the pathogenesis of that disease, I think that's just a huge advantage. So you just get more bang for your buck and your treatment with adding the absorption in, but you do perhaps maybe ought to treat a little bit longer. And with plasma absorption, you can just do that, and then you don't even have to give additional plasma. You just return the treated plasma back to the patient.
Yeah, and I've got a little bit of data too I can share. I wasn't prepared, so it's not very pretty. I just found some, found some in an old email from my chemist. I don't know if you can see that, but essentially what we're looking at, Atlas, Dublin, Echo, those are three carbon formulations, Echo being having the best affinity. But I echo what, no pun intended, I echo what Parker said. These columns are very good at removing bilirubin. So the way that we measure it is typically just in mass removal. So if we look at, say, a 100 mil column with echo, it's got the potential to remove 23 milligrams of bilirubin, which is almost 1-for-1. 1 gram of bilirubin, or 1 milligram of bilirubin per gram of carbon. And then the 300 mil would remove up to 69 milligrams. So I can plot that out. I wasn't prepared to pull that information for y'all, but I can plot that out and I can pull some additional information. So.
And so Jeff, just to put everybody on the same page about the nomenclature, ECHO would be the cytoclear right now, right?
That's correct. Sorry. So Atlas, Dublin, and Echo were the three carbons I showed there. Atlas is discontinued. We replaced that with Dublin, which is Toxiclear, and Echo is Cytoclear. Thanks, Cedric.
And something Dr. Calgill has shared that information before as well. And so maybe and I think that was using carbon for the plasma absorption. Are we clearing it? Are we saying that Echo has the ability to clear the antibodies, the immunoglobulins as well, out of that plasma that's been taken out?
It does. It's not as good. We made another carbon we called Felix, which had double the pore size of Echo. And that did a pretty good job of removing IgG. We've never seen anything that did a good job of removing IgM. So if you're dealing with an IgG-mediated IMHA, I think Felix is not commercially available. It's something that we've been testing. I think if that's our target, we need to have a more customized or tailored adsorbent for those. They're huge. There are 300,000 Daltons IgG and IgM's 1 million Daltons. So you really need to have a very different adsorbent for those.
Yeah. I feel like, and I don't know if you would agree with that, Jeff, but for IgMs, maybe adsorption is not the way to go.
At
I mean,
this
to
point in
echo,
time, I totally agree.
yeah, to echo like the presentation that we had 2 weeks ago, I think for IgM, the procedure that would be the most successful, I think, would be double filtration plasmapheresis, where you would separate the plasma and then you would separate like the higher fraction of the plasma, higher molecular weight fraction of the plasma. So that's the best way to get rid of the IgM and to some extent of the IgG as well, and then return the other fraction of the plasma, including the albumin, to the patient. So I think for those who have the machine with the capability to do that, I think it's an interesting strategy.
We measured actually in one of our cases direct and indirect bilirubin. I think I can share that too, if anybody's interested.
Sure, that would be awesome. And that's what I like having input from like multiple centers and multiple experience. That's always very enriching for everybody.
So there was a leptospirosis case with we're in Canada, so we have different units for bilirubin. So the initial bilirubin for that case was like 700 coming in, and we used the vet rescue hemoperfusion device to try to decrease the bilirubin. And I think we started at the second treatment of hemodialysis, and then we had here on the left side, that's the hemodialysis only for the total bilirubin, and then sorry, we had the hemodialysis with we use a high flux dialyzer H6, and we do have some binding on that too. So if you look at the hemodialysis, we got around for the first treatment we did came from like 450 to like 300 just with the hemodialysis. And if you look up then direct versus indirect, I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with indirect versus direct. So the indirect is the protein bound, and then that one is the one which is actually water soluble. And we got a pretty good reduction just with the normal hemodialyzer for the direct one, so the water soluble one versus the protein bound one. And then if you combine that on the fourth column over here, that's with the vet rescue hemoperfusion device, where we combined hemodialysis with the device, and we got a way better reduction in the direct and the indirect bilirubin for that.
Nice. That's a really nice illustration. Helps feed this whole conversation.
Those data also, illustrate that there's a huge pool of water soluble bilirubin that's available for redistribution. And I think that's the reason that our plasma exchange is not very efficient with that. And then again, if you add a plasma absorption onto the end of your treatment, you don't need any additional replacement volume. You just deliver the absorbed plasma back to the patient as the replacement.
Yeah. And it also shows for our leptospirosis cases that the direct bilirubin, so the unconjugated bilirubin is way more important in the high bilirubin cases we do see in our lepto cases up here in the Northwest. So the indirect, so the protein bound is way lower compared to the direct one, which is probably a little bit different in the IMHA cases. I would have to pull our data because we always measure both to see what the difference there is. But subjectively, if I'm looking back, the indirect component on our IMHA cases is significantly higher than the direct one compared to the lepto cases.
Well, I think, Karsten, it would be that you'd have the same kind of proportionality with the IMHA, because I think your binding sites for the indirect are going to be saturated, when you've got so much bilirubin around. And so there'd be no other place for, there might be some conjugation, but there's not going to be a lot of binding to sites in the vasculature because it's probably all bound by that point.
Yeah, I think I would have to pull the data to give maybe I can do that for the next one. Take a look at our IMHA cases and combine the data and see what the difference is.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that's data we actually published in a poster at EVAX this year too.
Yes.
I was at a couple of apheresis meetings, human apheresis meetings recently, and they're very jealous that that we have a mechanism to get the bilirubin removed, because human medicine would really like to have some way of reducing bilirubin in their patients.
I mean, they do have the cytosorb available, though. It's probably more a problem of like approved indication and insurance reimbursement more than anything else.
Well, but the concept of absorption is not ingrained in human medicine like it is in veterinary medicine.
Carolyn, you know how I love to put you on the spot there. Do you guys have anything out of Tufts that has been looking at bilirubin and absorptive devices in TPE or other types of cases? So I think you guys are looking at some lepto stuff too, right?
We did do some lepto stuff, but we weren't looking at bilirubin in that case. We aren't currently, I think, looking at anything directly. We have been doing, like everybody else, we've been adding adsorptive devices in doing TPE, but we aren't involved in anything directly. I have a whole bunch of samples banked on a whole bunch of patients upstairs, but so far we're not testing anything yet.
Cedric, are you routinely, it sounds like Carolyn and Tufts team is routinely putting in a hemoabsorptive device. Are you doing that with your TPE cases as well, Cedric?
No, I mean, unless the bilirubin is really high and I want to get a little bit ahead of the game on that. I feel like if bilirubin is only moderately elevated, and again, I don't have a real cutoff number on top of my head, but you're going to remove about 30% on that first treatment, and it's going to rebound a little higher for the second treatment. But then, just like you're doing with IgGs, I think, it's just like you see that curve is kind of like slowly going down, because at some point you're just mobilizing all the pool of bilirubin, the peripheral pool of bilirubin, and if there's no more generation, if your hemolysis is controlled, I feel like with the 3 daily treatments, we can actually achieve a pretty good bilirubin reduction. But in cases where like the dog is symptomatic for the hyperbilirubinemia, I mean, or we have very high numbers, obviously, I will reach out for an absorptive device as well.
Yeah, I think that's currently, I think we share a similar, approach to that. It kind of depends on where the Billy is at. But I think some of these discussions may help prove that maybe there's more than just bilirubin removal that's
Yeah.
this might benefit.
The other question I would have for those who are doing membrane-based plasma exchange, are you putting your absorptive device on the blood side and doing like actual hemoperfusion, or are you doing plasma perfusion and returning treated plasma to the patient? And if you're doing hemoperfusion, are you putting your cartridge ahead of a dialyzer, ahead of a plasma filter, or after the plasma filter? And what's your rationale for that? Looks like you're muted, Jethro.
There we go. Sorry about that. Too many layers here. Share this. This has been my classic setup if I'm going to do this in series on a membrane-based platform. I'm placing I'm doing hemoperfusion pre-filter. I suppose is how I guess you'd label this. As opposed to I haven't done any plasma filtration or plasma absorption, I should say, because again, I'm not, and this conversation is helped to elucidate that too. I'm not confident that I'm giving back plasma that should be given back even after it's been run over, whether it's carbon or whether it's a vet rescue device, delivering back some of the exact immunoglobulins that I've taken out with the plasma exchange process. I may be clearing some things from the plasma, but I don't want to give that nasty stuff back either. So that's where I'm struggling with the concept of the plasma absorption, and that's where I really appreciate your kind of guidance around double filtration plasmapheresis as probably a better thought process in that for me anyway, conceptually. But if I'm missing something, please let me know.
Well, I might add, if you're going to do plasma absorption on the Prismax or the Prismaflex system, you have to make some modifications to the blood tubing sets, because otherwise you've got to deal with what's going in the bags and the scales and all of that. It's very easy. And I can maybe share again. Let me see if I can share again. I've shown this at several meetings, but I think plasma absorption is very easy on that platform. But there are two things. So if your plasma is going to be coming out here, and ordinarily that would go into the waste scale, and then you need to accommodate that somehow. And so you need to make a couple of modifications in the system to do that. One is you've got to, and if you're going to anticipate putting on an extracorporeal, an extra device to do plasma absorption, then you've got to redirect your replacement fluid in so that your mil per mil, you've got to account for in the waste bag exactly what you've drawn out of the replacement bag. And so we would heat seal that line once we get ready to do the plasma absorption, or if you anticipate doing that in advance aseptically, you can just add a stopcock in your system so that when you then want to to follow up with plasma absorption, you just change the stopcock here so that now your replacement solution is coming through this out here and not going into the deaeration chamber. It's going to go directly into the waste bag. So every mil of replacement solution that you draw up is going to go in the waste bag, and that's going to satisfy the requirements for the waste bag. So this is the biggest problem that you would have. And you can either, if you have a heat sealer, you can just seal this line, and you can swedge on a stopcock very easily onto that line. You don't need anything fancy. And then the other modification that you have to make then is to divert your plasma. This would be your effluent through your absorptive device, and then that comes back into the deaeration chamber and is returned to the patient. So all of that's very easy to do. You just have to make sure that you do it aseptically. And in that system, and you can see very nicely here that you get very, very good clearance. So here we've got all this green dye coming in, and it's absolutely clear coming out. So you get good treatment efficacy. But now we've diverted our replacement solution into the waste bag so that we satisfy that requirement of the machine. And then we divert the effluent into the inlet of the absorptive device. The outlet of the absorptive device then would go directly into the return blood. And on the Prismax, you've got a connector there that would ordinarily allow you to hook up to the heating, the blood warmer. And so at least on the adult tubing sets, and then you can just put a stopcock easily in that line, and then your treated plasma then goes directly back to the patient. So those are modifications that you have to do, and the machine will run for hours and hours and hours in that configuration without any hiccups.
And what I would like to point out on that modification, it seems overcomplicated compared to just putting the cartridge in line with the plasma filter, but especially for like smaller size patient, it makes a huge difference in terms of extracorporeal circuit size. It might actually allow you to use a bigger cartridge, like a V300 instead of a V100, or a big cytosorb and not a small one, because now your cartridge is on the plasma circuit, so it's not a part of the extracorporeal volume anymore. The other advantage with that technique is that potentially that would open the door to some adsorbents that would be not hemocompatible, but that you could route the plasma through. I mean, I don't have any on top of my head right now, but I mean, we can imagine that with some technologies, you might have something that you cannot run the blood on, but the plasma would be just fine. So it's always interesting to have that kind of like backup plan. And especially if you have a smaller patient, because again, like in the US, we don't have access to the small TP set, the TP 1000, and on top of my head, I think the TP 2000 is 146 mils of extracorporeal volume. So if you start to have like a hemoperfusion cartridge, you're like very fast above 200 mils of extracorporeal volumes, but that can be an issue as well.
And again, you're doing clearance, so whatever solutes the absorptive device is going to remove, but you don't have to give any replacement plasma.
And do you think there would be any advantage if you're doing perfusion to place the cartridge after the plasma filter, so you actually already remove some of the plasma before you run it? You run the whole blood through the cartridge, and I'm not sure it would make a huge difference, would it?
Well, I guess one argument would be the hemoperfusion sorbents are more efficient at higher concentrations than they are at lower concentrations, and so.
I would also probably be concerned about just the hemo concentration through the plasma filter and running a higher PCV inside the cartridge, maybe more risk of clotting.
And more risk of clotting, I think, would be the big one. But this modification is very easy. I mean, and if I know that I'm going to do hemoperfusion at the beginning, then if I go back here and share this again. I mean, the important step, let's see if maybe it's this one. Oh, my screen won't. So the important step is this one here, because you need to maintain sterility. Well, not this one. This is the important step, is that you maintain sterility in the return line. And so if I know that I'm going to do this, and we have a heat sealer or line sealer in the unit on the Optia. So I mean, if you decide to do this, you can just seal that line aseptically, and you're fine. But otherwise, when the kit, when I open the kit up, the kit is sterile, and then you just drop in a sterile scissor and a couple of sterile stopcocks, and you just cut this line, put a stopcock across it, and it's really easy because and this picture's not very big, but you can see that the male end of that lure stopcock will swedge into that line very nicely and very tightly. And then you put a stopcock there, and then you just put another extension set that goes from here to your waste bag. That's the only real concern, is you do that aseptically. And if you don't do it at the beginning of the treatment, then you're not going to be able to be aseptic if you try to cut this line, unless you scrub it, But I wouldn't trust that. But just put the stopcock in the line, then you can just turn it and go from plasma exchange to plasma absorption instantaneously.
Michael, did you have a question you wanted to put out around this?
Not related to this, but related to a case that I had. I mean, I guess it's related to hemoperfusion. But so I recently moved from like Utah to California, and I'm going to be starting a program at my new hospital here, and I ordered a Prismax sort of to start. But I still do some relief work at a hospital like an hour and a half away from me that they have a Prismax, and I was working in the ICU on Sunday and got a call about a 11-kilogram puppy that ingested 400 mg per kg of carprofen like 7 to 8-ish hours before. And the dog was like, the owner had actually made it puke and brought some of it up, but like they recommended referral given like how much the dog had ingested. And so for me, there were a lot of firsts just because I mean, I've used the Prismaflex, but I'd never used the Prismax, and I've actually never done hemoperfusion on that platform. And so I was more curious about how other people set it up, because I had some issues, and I have like just some pictures of my setup I can try and pull up and share. Um, but so I ended up using an HF20 filter and then the small immunologic device. Let me see if I can share my screen, if it will let me. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Still just
No?
seeing you.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Let's see.
Oh, it's
Okay.
coming.
Yeah. So initially I had like set it up kind of like this, where I had like zip tied the cartridge to the handle here, but this line was like super taut. Um, and then like there was almost like a small kink there and a small kink there, and I was having issues where it kept on alarming, saying that there was like high pressure. It basically thought that the filter was clotted. And ultimately, like I was trying to troubleshoot it, and I determined that there actually was a pretty big clot in this. And so what I ended up doing was I like took the dog, or I took that out almost like you were going to do a hot swap, and like let the machine just run and like dialyze his blood essentially while I primed a second one. And then I had a different setup. The problem there is that like all of their fluid poles have like these giant footprints. And so I ended up getting one of the like things for portable oxygen, and I feel like this was much better. Like the lines were not like super taut and there weren't any kinks in it, and it actually flowed perfectly, and then I was able to finish the rest of the treatment, if that makes sense. But I guess the questions that I had were sort of like, if people are using like doing hemoperfusion on the Prismax, like are you guys like letting them, like does it make sense to potentially like let the machine run for 10 or 15 minutes, make sure they're like adequately anticoagulated before like stopping and incorporating the device? Or are you just having it like you prime the machine, prime the cartridge, incorporate it, and then connect the patient, I guess is sort of how everyone's doing that. Because at my old job, I had an IHD platform. And so I pretty much would always just do my hemoperfusion on that. And I never really had these issues. But the one other criticalist at that hospital who has been doing like extracorporeal therapies has been having issues with the like high pressuring on the Prismax and incorporating those cartridges. So I wasn't sure if anyone else was having the same issues.
I would make two suggestions. One is I've always conventionally hooked it up the way you had it the first time, and you can turn that cartridge around a little bit so there's a little bit less stretch on that line. I think the big issue that we've had with any hemoperfusion device is that we're using dialysis extra anticoagulation strategies for hemoperfusion, and and hemoperfusion, in my experience, requires higher ACT concentrations. It requires more anticoagulation than with just dialysis. So that's my concept number one. And you probably need to have the ACT above 200 or 250, maybe even 300 to prevent clotting. Because I think when we survey almost everybody that's having clotting problems with these devices, they're just not heparinized enough. The
And,
second
and
issue, the second issue is that
mm,
I think a lot of times the treatment is started before the ACT target has been confirmed. And you may start, give the dog a dose of heparin, start the perfusion, presuming that it's going to go to whatever your target hematocrit is. But if it's short of target, then you get some initial fibrin deposition or even some initial clotting, and then that's just going to grow and grow and grow. So the second real important recommendation that I would make is make sure that you're at your ACT target before you start the treatment.
okay, so do you bolus them and start the CRI like peripherally and not use the pump on the machine then? Or do you just like bolus them and recheck like 15 or 20 minutes later? Because that's what I do when
I think you bolus them and confirm that you're at the ACT that you want for the treatment before you start the treatment.
okay, because that's what I
So if you want
do
a
with
250 ACT, you give them a dose of heparin, check the ACT to see if it's where you want it. If it's not, you give them more until you get to your target ACT for the treatment. And then
yeah.
you would start the CRI off the machine and then check them in about 10 or 15 minutes to make sure that you're maintaining that ACT.
Yeah, and I will say like that's what I do with like my IMHAs, because when I first like in our residency I had sent several that were like clotting the circuit, so I tend to be doing that more so. So I guess I'll start doing that with these guys. But that's like a segue into the second question I had sort of about this case. So this hospital does not have ACT, so they're using PTT, which I've also never really used for monitoring heparin anticoagulation. And I think for me the problem was like I feel like there's also a lot of user error with those in-house PTTs. Like the first one I ran, I bolused the dog, I think like 40 units per kg of heparin to start, and then his PTT went from like 95 seconds to like 180 seconds. And then I was like, oh, I'll just like keep him on the CRI that I had started him at and then sort of see what happens. But then like the next one was 30 seconds, and then I had them rerun it on a new sample and it was too high to read. So I was wondering if, I mean, I don't really want to use PTT at my hospital now that I work at full time, but has anyone used the iStat ACT cartridges? Because I've been having problems trying to find an ACT machine, and I saw that iStat makes those. And there was like a paper validating them in dogs, like a very small paper, and I saw many in people, but I wasn't sure if anyone else was using those at all or had any experience with them.
I can't
We
comment on that, but maybe a 40 unit per kilo heparin dose is not going to be a big enough dose for plasma for hemoperfusion.
So start higher.
I'd start higher, yeah.
I usually start around 100.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Especially, yes, yeah. Especially if it's an NSAID.
Interesting. I haven't had issues like when I was doing it on the IHD platform, I always did between like 40 and 50 to start, and I really didn't have any issues with that at all. Like I had no clotting issues. So I mean, every dog is different, but yeah.
I mean,
Well,
and
those are dialysis doses, and again, and maybe Parker or Jeff will comment on this as well. But I think the experience is that in the example that I gave at a couple of sessions a few weeks ago, when we first started doing hemodialysis, we didn't have synthetic membrane dialyzers. We had cellulosic membrane dialyzers. This is way back in the 70s, and you had to run the ACT at 300 in order to keep that membrane from clotting. And then when the synthetic membrane dialyzers, when polysulfone came out, it dropped the heparin requirements in half, essentially in half. So the heparin requirements are device specific, not treatment specific.
one of your questions in there as far as circuit setup and stuff, I don't know if we hit on for you or not there. I'm inconsistent whether I add the whatever device in the circuits during the normal prime, or I prime and then add it in after. And some of it's influenced by some recency bias, depending how the last setup went. Particularly my TP2000 sets. On my Prismax, I have a little bit of a challenge sometimes getting the prime to go through the first time through, and so I don't put anything else in the circuit just to try and like be able to focus on Priscilla, our Prismax, just having her way, so she just gets set, and then I add it in after. But certainly in other setups, I've for the sake of the ease of priming, I've just put it into the circuit as is. And then I
Okay.
followed the priming instructions. So if it's a carbon device, I will prime and make sure I'm getting some D5W in there as well as some hepsaline. And so I'll alter the fluid choices I'm using to prime based on the device that I'm incorporating into the circuit if I'm doing that, so that I make sure I follow those instructions as well. So it's a little bit it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another in terms of which direction I go with that. And then I think Dr. Calvo kind of alluded to it as well. If you're incorporating it, direct into the circuit there, getting something close by. Let me see if I can pull this up. This is actually I don't know if you can see the little arm here. This is made by the vet rescue folks, the cytosorbent folks. So I've got that hooked up onto an IV pole that's next to my Prismax, and the arm
Yeah.
reaches in front of it that way. But I do take out that pressure pod, that immediate pressure pod right there, and I flip it over from the normal setup, and that gives me more slack in
Oh.
the circuit as well. So you can put that in, you can make that upside down, and it gives you a titch more slack if you need to, if you're hesitant to add more circuitry into the mix, more attachment lines for volume's sake.
No, that makes sense. I didn't realize you could flip it over, so that's actually good to know.
So about flipping it over, though, I would be cautious because I've seen people prime the circuit with the pod flipped over, and what happens is then like the air doesn't come out of the pod properly. So if you prime with you have to be with the fluid going from the bottom to the top and not the opposite. So if you flip the pod before you prime, you can have the fluid going from top to bottom. You can have some air remaining in that pod. So you
Okay.
prime the right way, and then you can flip it. It doesn't matter when it's full. But during the prime, I've seen that, and then you have some problems.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Well,
And has anyone used?
you want to prime it though, I think, in the direction that you're gonna treat. because otherwise you might get, when you prime it, you're going to pack the beads, the bead bed, and then when you turn it over and you're perfusing in the or flowing in the other direction, you're going to disrupt all of that. And maybe it's not important, but I always thought that it was kind of important that you disrupt the packing of the bed when you switch directions like that.
Now, I was talking about the pressure pod,
Oh, okay.
like before the filter.
Hey, from the vet rescue device side, I'll speak to that. I just wanted to share this image on the left real quick, because sometimes the simplest way to connect these and integrate them into your system may be an answer for some folks. So this setup, basically your pressure dome coming off here, you can actually disconnect here from your filter, put the original one. These folks put in an extension, but you typically can go directly in here and then come out the top. Priming this, Dr. Calgill is correct. We always prime from the bottom, going out the top, and because that allows for laminar flow through the beads to make sure that the device is primed correctly. However, after it's primed, if for some reason you turn the device upside down and switch the lines, it doesn't matter which way the device goes. You just need to always have volume going from the bottom out the top of the device, so that the beads are exposed to the full volume of blood, and you do not get any type of channeling or anything like that. So that's why we go from the bottom to the top. But yeah, so this is another way to do this, is with the zip ties.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think
a physician taught me that, and I give her credit every time I teach it. So
yeah. And then I guess my only other question was, does anyone use the iStat ACT cartridges? Or are you all using, because like I had the ACT Plus machine or whatever for the last couple years. I'm just trying to figure out if I get one of those, which my people have been having a hard time finding, versus do I get, like, we have the iStats already. Like, do I just use those cartridges?
I've used them in an equine application for this stuff, and we ended up finding a used ACT Plus instead and swapping over. And maybe that was just our population and being out in the barn. The iStats, they've got to be warmed up just right, and they just gave us a lot of inconsistent results. And again, so this is a little bit specific to that because we were running our ACTs like in the 600 or 700 range instead. So by the time we failed an ACT, we'd spent so much time waiting on it, or it
Oh yeah.
conked out at us. So at these slightly lower rates or times, it might not be as big of a deal, but they are a little more expensive than the little ACT cups as well. Now the ACT pluses, I think, unless anybody else has gotten any new information since the last time we chatted about this, are not being manufactured. So we get our secondhand, but they're supposed to continue to make the ACT cups for another 5 to 7 years, is what the company told me about. But that's still going to, be a limiting step. And there have been some times where we've had a little bit of trouble getting a hold of them. So just as a side note there. So I think we have to learn how to adapt. If the ACT is not going to be the long-term future, so maybe you'll lead the way with that as you figure out the iStat PTT stuff.
Anyway.
But I'm for me, when I'm starting in a new place or building a new unit, I'm a creature of habit, and I like what's familiar because I know how to be safe with it and I know how to predict it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was very stressful being like, I mean, I've used the Prismaflex and I'm very comfortable with that, but like being because it was the first time I'd ever treated anything at this hospital. So it was like new hospital, never used PTT personally, like never done hemoperfusion on the Prismax. And I mean, luckily it ended up going fine in the end, but it was a little bit of a roller coaster.
Well, it sounds like you're going to be coming with lots of good content at these meetings to troubleshoot through, and hopefully collectively we can try and put some of those pieces together to help out where we can. Well, I think I think Michael, I think there's more parts to your experience and more questions, but given the time here, we should probably start wrapping this up. Thank you again. Cedric kind of alluded to it earlier on, but we have like 6, 7, maybe 8 or 9 different folks, kind of chime in here and share some experience or questions. And Karsten's, addition to the presentation there, Dr. Calgill, as always, our hemoperfusion friends, Michael and the team out in Columbus, Cedric, as always. So amazing contributions from everybody. So thank you for joining us. Both Cedric and I do have socials listed there. The more we can connect and kind of share with everybody else and follow back each other, we can build this community even further, I think, and make sure we're helping each other out. Reminder, if anybody on here hasn't enrolled or hasn't taken it before, registration's open for the upcoming Hemodialysis Academy. It's an amazing experience, amazing folks to learn from, to tie into all the practical work that you're doing in clinics. I can't speak highly enough for the group there. And then, of course, bringing this all together with common goals and friendship and collegiality and celebration of all the great work we're doing, but also to learn. There's a boot camp coming up associated with Renal Week, and then some great lectures. The Extracorporeal Hour is going to be having live on-site sessions during Renal Week. And so save these dates, April 12th through April 17, 2027. Hope to see you guys there. And a little bit of a teaser. I think Cedric and I are going to try and get together to get out to IVEX this coming year in Savannah. Have some live sessions if we can, or at least get some Extracorporeal Hour material filmed or recorded during that conference. Hope to see many of you guys there as well. And as always, thank you everybody for the contributions and the collegiality, the learning from each other, the openness to share and to be non-judgmental in what everybody else is sharing as we go. What a great session again. Thank you for that. And I don't know if Cedric is still on. He said he was traveling, but I'll
Still,
maybe him with the final word.
My connection is a little wonky, but I really enjoyed that session today. Like many people coming to the mic and sharing experience, and some new people starting to intervene too. So really makes me happy there. So I think you said everything about the next events that are coming up. I hope to see many of you at IVEX in September, and in 2 weeks on the Extracorporeal Hour.
Don't forget, if you missed anything this time or the last session talking about polyradiculoneuritis and TPE, these sessions are all recorded and on the ACVNU YouTube channel. So come back and listen to them all over again for twice the info, twice the exposure. With that, have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.